I'd like to welcome you all to the 2020 virtual Hudson Hot Air Affair. This is a pilot roundtable. With us today, we have a 50-year Wright Brothers Award recipient, Steve Johnson, pilot from Duluth, Minnesota. We also have 3 master pilots with us, Larry Nicolay from Newport, Minnesota, Dave Johnson from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and myself, Glenn Terry from Now Then, Minnesota. Today we're going to show some vintage footage from from a 1995 Hudson Hot Air Affair race. During that particular event, I happened to be flying with Dave in his balloon, taking the video. If I recall, it happened to be a fairly cold morning, a little bit breezy, kind of marginal. You'll still see that in the video as we go along. We also want to take a brief minute and go around the table. We'll start with Steve, kind of in the order that I see him on the screen, and just give a kind of a history of your involvement in the Hudson Hot Air Affair, when you started flying, maybe how many years you've attended, any special things you've done, parades, that kind of thing. Go ahead, Steve, we'll start with you.
That's an easy one for me to remember because it was my first Hudson Hot Air Affair rally, and only my second rally started at Faribault the fall before. I just got my balloon in '93, and I just flew the heck out of it through '94. I think up in Duluth, with all the woods and so on, you have to pick and choose your days. I counted them one year, and it was 44 days I could fly a balloon if I kept it under 6-7 mile an hour winds. And I had to do that because the big square I was flying in was 6-7 mile square. So I wanted to have a good flight, at least an hour flight. And so a lot of times I was flying 3, 4, 5 mile an hour winds. And so when I got to Hudson, I had a lot of flights behind me, and I could steer and all that sort of thing, steering around the woods. But that day was a little bit on the windy side, and my sponsor didn't show up. So my wife, April, the balloon's named after, April Love, she hopped in there with me. And off we went. Of course, you back up quite a ways when the wind's blowing from, I guess, the north. You had those power lines at the south end of the field. Made it over those, of course, and off we went. And it was the first time I'd ever thrown a beanbag at a target. And the target was a crossroads, and it came up fairly quick. And I think I saw where the target was, and being the greenhorn I was, never thrown a beanbag in my life. I came over the crossroads and tossed the beanbag. And there were judges down there, and there was a house off to the southwest corner, and the beanbag went down, and it started continuing its flight past the crossroads, just missed the house. And it landed quite a ways away. So I thought, I have to be a bombardier now, not just a pilot. So that's why I learned my bombardiering things. And later on at Faribault, I did hit the dead center after 9 miles chase. But then the next gal behind me, Annette, she hit 4 inches away from me. So it was a very stiff competition. And I won the glass plate, with the winner on it, which I was very proud of. Still have it, of course.
So how many years have you flown at Hudson?
I think it was 22, something like that. Yeah. And I missed one, I think, out of all the years. And then, of course, I sold my balloon in 19. So I had 25 years in, and that was a milestone, I think. That flight was the longest flight. I only tied it twice because apparently there was a park, and I had to make it over this park. And I kept going and going. And the balloon being new and a size 6 Aurora, I was getting close to 2 hours on it. And that is unbelievable.
That is.
It was cold and it was windy. The wind picked up. And I remember the landing was over power lines. And my wife very cautiously was saying, there's power lines, as I was making my approach. And I said, I got him. And did lots of landings.
Do you have any idea?
You had to get in
where that was? In 2 hours?
That would be across the park, along the river there.
But Prescott? Were you down to Prescott in 2 hours?
I think that's what it was, Prescott. I think that's what I read in my.
That's a long, long flight.
Yeah, let's see.
Steve was going to tell us about the year he threw his beanbag and landed on top of that Ford pickup, and they logged it in Eau Claire. Wasn't that the?
Yeah.
Hudson, Prescott. You got it right on the button there, Larry.
Wow, that logbook looks pretty new, actually. That logbook looks great. How do you do that? How do you keep things so nice?
Well, funny that you had mentioned this logbook. It's a big one, you know, because I was airplanes. And somebody in the Hudson Hot Air Affair lineup, when we were checking in, and I was getting to the right page with all my things I need to have there for the check-in people. And he says, "Boy, that's a big logbook. You think you'll ever fill it up?" And I just said, "I hope so," but it was actually my second logbook.
And so, is that the only logbook then, being that it's so big?
You've got your fixed wing hours in there
I
too.
had one of the small ones that you start flying airplanes with, but when you go back to those days in 1968, there was no FAA then. It was CAR rules, not FAR rules.
Oh, really? Huh.
There's only one other guy that told me he remembered that and had the same book, CARs. So FARs came, the FAA really got popular after Lockerbie, Scotland, when they had the crash, and when the FAA got involved, and everything became FAR regulations. So, I'm up there, you know. I'm 72, but
what? You're 70? You're 72?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I'm that old too, probably.
As I mentioned
I figured out.
as I mentioned in the introduction, you know, we were talking over 50 years of flying for Steve. It's a long time, Steve.
This pin here, that's the Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award. It's a little different than the ballooning one. It's for 50 years of aviation. And so, yeah, it goes back a long time, but boy, I enjoyed every minute. There's 1,000 adventures, you know, and that's what it was. And Hudson, because this is all about Hudson, with the parades, I really got involved in those. I mean, a little bit too much, you know.
You really did. I got to admit, you're the best parade person we ever had there.
It was a lot of fun, and I'm plagued with an imagination of 1,000 ideas a second, you know. Only time enough to do half of them. Not even that. But I had a lot of fun doing those, and the smiles and all that was always worth it. And the flights were always great. The sponsors were so involved, and I just got to really respect a lot of them, and taking up their families and so I really appreciated their sponsorship. So that's what it's all about. And the crews, if you ever needed a cruise, Hudson was always good to supply you with some crew. And I always had mine, but sometimes I needed a few more, and they were there. And you can't do this without a crew. So I take my hat off. I don't want to do that. I'm getting a little.
Hey, another Benjamin Franklin. You just got to let it grow out in the back a little.
Yeah, well, you look good. You look like Ben. Well, that's great.
Okay. Larry, why don't you go ahead?
When I would fill out an application for Hot Air Affair, they always asked, "How many years have you flown?" And my stock answer was 28 years. It was always the same, no matter how many or whatever. And actually, you know, I think I'm at that point where I probably am telling the truth finally. And so, you know, I think I missed 2 or 3, but 1 year in the hospital, and then a couple years in the Red Baron Stomp up in Superior. And other than that, I made them all. I was lucky enough to be flying for Whitaker, so that I really knew the area, and I really felt like I needed to be there because we needed land-order relationships, because they weren't always that great around that area. And then I've started flying for Amos, and again, you know, that's pretty much my area, and I just seemed like I really needed to be there just because, well, I mean, Hudson is a great town. Stillwater's a great town, and I really enjoyed every minute there. And that's all, and that's the truth.
Okay, Dave, go ahead.
Well, I mentioned this a little earlier when Evie was still on. I remember going up to the golf course there in Hudson having lunch. One day Rose was working there at the time, and she had this vision about having a balloon event in Hudson, and she was pitching it to Evie. Evie was, I think, the general manager there at the golf course at the time. Can't remember what the golf course was called. I don't know, Larry, maybe you'd recall.
It was the Hudson.
Was it? Oh, would you imagine that?
Yeah.
And so, one of the questions at lunch there was, would you be interested in participating in that? And I said, by all means, let me know. So for the first 16 years of the event, I participated in the Hudson Hot Air Affair. Always had a good time. Always had great sponsors. I remember Laser Magic, a number of years was the sponsor. They had a big family, always had a lot of crew, real nice folks. And then our grandson Jalen was born on the same day of the Saturday Hudson Hot Air Affair, the first flight. So there were a few years where it was kind of nip and tuck in terms of whether or not we'd have participation in the Hudson Hot Air Affair or be there for our grandson's birthday event.
Which was in Albuquerque.
Pardon?
Which was in Albuquerque, right?
No, this is my son Aaron's son Jalen.
Oh, okay.
Lived down in Rosemont at the time, but he spent most weekends with us. So again, there was a bit of a conflict there. So from the first to the 16th year, was always there for the event, and then after that, it became maybe every other year kind of scenario. Always enjoyed the event though, and much like yourself, Larry, I mean, a lot of my flying time and hours was down in that neighborhood back in the day. And
it's a beautiful area to fly.
Yeah, it felt like you knew it fairly well. And
Yep. With a lot.
Yeah, I started.
Go ahead.
I started down there with the second year. I missed the first year, and I think part of that was and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first year there was maybe 10 balloons, maybe 12 at the most. That sound about right?
This sounds about right. I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you.
Because I think it was kind of it was a smaller group the first year, and then the second year, they opened it up a little more, and I think they felt comfortable with the idea of even having the event, and and so forth. And so then I was flying that smaller balloon, that AX6. Of course, I'd been sport flying. I wasn't doing commercial rides, so for me, even just being around that many balloons, was a challenge. I mean, of course, we had quite a few hours by then, but still, it was it was different. So and then not having the fuel capacity, the distance, like Steve was saying, you get in a small balloon, an AX6, and I think at the time I carried 20 gallons. I might have had an extra tank with me just as a reserve, but I didn't have the duration like a lot of the bigger balloons had. So it was always interesting. But my sponsor too, I flew the smaller balloon until 1996. And then my sponsor, Stan Falkenhagen, at that time he worked for Opperman Financial, and then he ended up with his own business. But his in-laws live right across the street, so they always had a balloon party, so it was great. He'd bring the whole family over, in-laws, everybody. We'd pick out who was going to go up that year, and everybody would come out and crew. We got all done. We'd go to Harley's place across the street. We'd have breakfast, and it was just great. And he was my sponsor for probably, I want to say 18 years. And then the last time I flew there, I think it was probably 4 years ago. And then I sold my balloon here this last year. So, but I still like to go over there. I like to help out. Participate when I can, and help do what I can. So,
I'm sorry. interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that I would recollect in terms of those early years when you mentioned the number of pilots or participants, and I think one of the other things to point out is that it was really, it was the core group of pilots for the, except for Steve in Duluth, maybe, the Kurt Shippies, the Jimmy Borchards, Larry. I mean, it was the local pilots that first few years, Georgie Eibach, Mike Summers, so on and so forth. And
Right.
like that. And then over the
Yeah.
years, with more of a commercial, impact or participation, I think you saw that change, and more people from various parts of Wisconsin and Illinois, and a few people from outstate. I remember, like in this video, the peanut balloon, that's Eric Barnum from out of Ohio, flew that commercially for many, many years. I used to see him down in Louisville. So the makeup of the event, I think, had a transition, so to speak, away from more of the local pilot to more of a Wisconsin, Illinois, outstate, commercial, that type of thing.
But don't you think that sort of reflected the times where there were fewer and fewer sport balloonists in general? I mean, the number has just been decreasing
Oh, absolutely.
all the time.
Totally agree with you on that.
And, this last year, even the commercial pilots had a hard time, but it just seemed like it was, from an expensive standpoint, it was just hard to do, I think, but.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think
one other thing, Glenn, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were talking earlier about, the flight from hell or whatever kind of scenario. I remember one flight, like Steve was talking about, the Prescott landing. Sue and I flew one year. I was on a Sunday morning at Hudson, and it was to the north, basically. We ended up flying over Apple River and then up back out of that's Somerset, right?
Yep.
And then up, and then to the north. And the night before there, it had been that, what's it called, the horsehair fog or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Ended up with on all the trees. So as we flew over the Apple Valley, or Apple River, excuse me, I mean, it was all around us. It was just gorgeous. It was probably the longest flight that we had.
And did you make it to New Richmond then, or did you actually land in Somerset?
No, we definitely went past Somerset.
Because there, if you wander off to the left, it's like the Mekong Delta, where the St. Croix River just broadens out, and there's no landing for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah.
But if you go to the right, that's New Richmond, and there's all kinds of landing.
That's where I landed last year at the Hudson Hot Air Affair.
That's a good ride.
Yeah.
When you got that far, you probably shouldn't have been flying the way I see it, with years of experience, because I remember doing that exact same thing, because George Eibach was so enthused about, we're going to go out and kill them, let's go out and fly, and it was too windy. But I said, well, it's the middle of winter, what can you hurt? You can't, it's soft landings, let's go for it.
Yeah.
And I made it to Richmond, and the crew couldn't keep up with me, and I swore I'd never do that again.
I landed
It's too windy, you just don't fly, period. I don't care what time of year.
Landed in the Walmart parking lot.
Yeah, I remember that area. There's a high school right there too.
Yeah.
That has a nice, wide, big field.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of those first early years I was flying that say Brandy's old balloon, and same direction, same flight path, and I made the mistake of having too much fun near the park. So I was, just goofing off in the park, flying low, taking up, not going anywhere. Well, then when I had to actually get somewhere, I didn't have a whole lot of time left on my fuel. And same thing, I had to take what I could get, fairly quick. But that's a beautiful area up there. I love, that's a nice area to fly.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I guess at this point, I'd like to really thank everyone that's, all the pilots, everybody that's involved, the crews and everybody directly involved with the Hudson Hot Air Affair, but also all the people that come out and watch, the people that watch these videos. The Hudson Hot Air Affair, they put a lot of time and effort into this for your enjoyment, and we're hoping that you have the opportunity to come out and spend time and watch the balloons, the different events, the sports that the things that go on at the field. Although this year, being that it's virtual, we're going to do our best to present you with as much video content as we can. There will be events out and around, although there will be no group participation, so to speak. There will be a lot of drive-through type events. So make sure that you always check with the Hudson Hot Air Affair website, and it literally is hudsonhotairaffair.com, all one word together. And keep in mind, we'd love to fly this year, but safety has always been our concern, both with the balloons, the pilots, and the crew. But now with the COVID and so forth, the spectators, we would not want to put anyone in harm's way. And we are going to do the best we can to present ourselves to you this year. And we hope you come out when you can to the drive-through events and stuff and enjoy what we have to offer. And with that, I said we have some vintage footage we're going to show you from 1995. And that particular day, it was rather cold, a little bit windy, and I happened to be flying with Dave here. And I was kind of in between balloons that year, so I had an opportunity to fly with him, and I brought up a video camera. Hope you enjoy it. We'll talk a little bit over the video as we show it. So with that, we'll get to the video. Oh, there's a... Feel free to jump in here.
Like Dave.
You can tell it's winter because Dave wasn't wearing his beret.
Can we talk at this point, or?
Sure. Yeah, and in fact, we can probably, obviously this is Dave's balloon here.
This is
You got the inflator started. I was going to say, you always have trouble starting it, but it looks like it started right off.
Yeah, that's nice of you, Glenn.
Yeah.
That was that's Jimmer Scala there. Oh, that's Big Pine.
So, Glenn, can you tell us if the inflator doesn't start, can you flap tuck a balloon?
I have.
Inflate?
In fact, when I first started, one of the prerequisites of getting checked off or signed off is I had to do
Bruce.
at least one inflation. Yep, with Bruce, do a flap inflation with no inflator fan. It definitely taught you burner control.
And he never, ever did use a fan, did he?
Yeah, he did. Actually, the first 2 years that I crewed with him and flew with him, he did not even own an inflator fan.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And then he got me I got a small one. And then at that point, I think he just decided that it was easier all the way around just to have one.
Yep.
Although I think for some races and some events he chose not to because it was faster than waiting for the inflator to fill the balloon. You just flap it and put the heat to it.
You had to have the right kind of balloon for that, or the right kind of spirit.
Yes, you had to have the open scoop on the bottom and not the skirt that went around.
Yep.
And preferably not too many gores. 8 or 12 gores is about all you needed.
And so this picture was the International Peace Garden balloon. Do you remember that one?
Originally, I think at least the pilot that trained, ultimately the pilot that flew that balloon on a regular basis was Dave Hendrickson.
Yep. And he flew with the guy from Fargo a lot, John Bolton. Bolger. Thank you. And I think he's still flying.
Yeah, he did the Medora, North Dakota flight this year.
Oh, really? Okay.
This here is Russ Hardy in that balloon there.
From Illinois.
Garfield?
Garfield, yeah, Russ has since quit flying. I think probably for the last 10 years he's
Oh, really?
given it up. But very, very active pilot back in the day. Nice fella.
Now, is this the first year they had actual special shapes? I see the peanut balloon back in the background. I don't recall too much before
That
this.
might very well be. Yeah.
I don't recognize those. It looks like Bruce's balloon in the background there.
Jim Rascola, he had purchased the balloon from another old pilot friend of ours, Sarah Madden. And I think that might have been the first year Jim flew in it.
You know, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that he had bought it from Sarah.
Yeah.
And I believe that balloon is still flying, isn't it? I think it's Pete Riley owns it.
No, that balloon I think ended up getting sold to a pilot down in Arkansas. Jim didn't charge much for it in that sale. Jim and I and his son Tony, who was about 5 at the time, took it out over the St. Croix, lifted off out of Whitaker's, and got over the St. Croix, and you could just feel this like an oxygen deprivation kind of thing. The nature of the aircraft felt different. It was over a relatively short period of time, it became quite porous.
Oh, this is the hair balloon right here with
That's Gus. Yeah.
Gus in the Crayola balloon. Is that what he called it?
Right. Yeah.
Crayola light, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's got a nylon or a fabric X with him, and he'll take off. He's the first one to take off, and everyone else is kind of waiting. Well, obviously they were inflating today.
No, what balloon is
before-
that? Is that the Garcia pizza balloon?
I don't think so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, so Gus is going to fly off and out in front of everyone, and then eventually land and put that big X on the ground. And all the other balloons are going to try to fly over the X and drop a beanbag on it.
And there's the
And I
piece
think
card.
Steve mentioned that they had an intersection too. And knowing Gus, he always likes to have these multiple targets. He probably, I don't remember that day, but he probably declared a judge declared goal where he said, put a baggie on this intersection and then put a second baggie or try to get to him on the hair. I'm not sure, but he does that a lot. He'll put 2 or 3 targets out there.
Just bring lots of bean bags.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've got such a good collection of bean bags because I never got close to throwing
There
any.
is that.
Oh, I went to an event in, well, it's not to bring up here, but shortly in Billings, Montana, they gave out 4 bean bags for one event, one race. Incredible. There's a nice shot of
Oh,
Dave
there's
inflating.
John Dietrich's Afton Airlines, right? The red and white. And the piano's getting up. I saw the piano.
Oh, that one. She was a tough balloon. Apparently, according to Sue, Dave, it was the
Pardon
best
me?
fabric ever made. His best fabric ever made by Aerostar was that model I had with the square weave.
Diamond weave?
A little heavy, but it was a small balloon. That didn't matter.
Just prior to the diamond weave.
Yeah.
Just before the diamond.
At that time, that was a BQ-11 fabric. Sue since has rebuilt that aircraft. And the BQ-11, as it turned out, didn't have a real good reputation. At least in my opinion, it didn't. But,
So we're just lifting off here in Dave's balloon, and I'm always amazed as a pilot, as you get off the ground, and it's like you go through this transition. I do anyway. You go through like a transition, and you look around, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm in the air. We're flying. This is great. I don't know. It's just a whole different world.
That reminded me a little bit of the year it was calm, and 50 balloons went up in the air. And after flying airplanes for years, and even biplanes and aerobatics and loop-de-loop and everything else, I never got vertigo. came flying in the clouds. But at that rally, with all those balloons going up and down, and I was in the middle of it, and they were trying to stay over the field. I had to go, whoa, I got a little vertigo here. Because you didn't know if I had to get
Don't
on.
look down. Don't look down. Look straight ahead.
Yeah, I had to look at my instruments and see what was going up and down. That was a great
Georgie Ibach. They're in the blue one.
Now, that might be a red baron, do you think?
No, it's got a white top.
Yeah.
And that's a garden. Is that the peace garden balloon?
I think so.
Okay. That's a nice view from up here going south. You can,
Yeah.
at
Heading
some
towards
points, you can
Prescott.
see,
Shippy with
you can see the river. And
Phoenix.
Yeah, that's still one of the prettiest balloons, I think. I just love the design of the Phoenix, or as Ben would call it, the black chicken, just to bother Kurt.
yeah.
Must really be high here because Lake Superior looks so small. That year, the crossroads and the target was very close, as I recall, because the park was coming up. A lot of people wanted to land
Okay.
before the park. Is that correct? If I remember, it's
Yeah.
a long ways back. So
Well, that looks like George there,
Yep, that's Georgie.
giving a wave. That's amazing when you're in the air like that, how easy it is to hear someone across in another balloon. For the most part, if you can see them, you can usually talk to them or yell at them, depending on how far away they are.
yeah, I carried an air horn just in case somebody's coming up underneath you.
Well,
You know you're
real
there.
good idea.
And you're always looking around at the shadows to see who's around you.
Yep.
But it was really a great experience.
There was one year where that was a problem at the Hot Air Affair, where balloons sort of mishmashed.
Yeah, I was involved in some of that.
That's where we were going.
But,
Just
you fly in, you learn, and you just do your thing, So, I mean, it was fine. It was just a situation where it got a little congested. We needed a little traffic control, but everything was fine. That's why you pay attention when you're flying.
Exactly.
That last shot kind of reminded me of when we headed north at one time, maybe 20 degrees. And the balloons were all out in front of me, and it was a misty fog out there. That was the most gorgeous sight I think I ever had ballooning, was all those balloons in this mist and ice crystals, a little bit just
Yeah, with the sun in back of you.
Yeah.
No, and watching George here too, one of the things that is probably not real apparent to someone just watching the film is we go at different altitudes, you notice that we ended up behind George when, because I'm sure the wind up above was probably a little slower. There's probably a shear in there where he scooted out in front of us or vice versa.
There's the black turkey.
Yep. Oh, a nice shot of the river.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the film I actually mentioned I wish I had my still camera.
So,
That would've
it's
made a nice
surprising
post.
that there's nobody down on the ice, because it's always tempting to go down to water or to ice, and nobody was down there. Everyone was flying high.
Yeah, I think that particular day they wanted to stay left.
Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, it's hard for the chase to cross the river. There's only two crossings at Hudson and Prescott's a long ways away.
Yeah. So here we go up high again, and now we're passing George on the other side. It doesn't look like we're going very fast, though.
I think it picked up towards the
Yeah,
end.
actually it does, now that I look at it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, I think the wind picked up towards the end there, because I scooted in pretty good. That's why I was hugging the power line just a little bit because the field was small and she was blowing pretty good, but everything worked out great.
Does anybody recall who that particular balloon was flown by? I would say it was somebody from North Dakota, but I just don't recall.
No, I don't remember. Yeah, somewhere I know coming up in the footage here, there's I think that we saw a tree house up there. We'll point it out if I see it. That's a nice shot. Looks like George is looking for a place to land.
I'm thinking that this might have been even before the big golf course was out there by the looks of it.
Yeah, there's some good. It's before the camp, I believe, before the YMCA camp and that, or the YWCA camp. There was a big field that quite a few balloons took into it. Actually, it's just coming up on this tree line here. Dave, did you land in that big field? I think you did.
I am not sure about that, Glenn.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. That looks nice.
There's a lot of balloons up there. So, Steve, you mentioned earlier when we were talking that you looked in your logbook and you had a notation that there was 44 balloons. Was that this year?
Boy, I wonder. Hudson. Yeah, 44 balloons. Yeah, how'd you remember that?
Well,
Crossroads Pass.
Historians, I tell you, they're historians out there.
yeah, I always love the view coming in. You know, I always love the view when you're coming into a field open, over the trees like that. Opens right up.
I never had a disappointed passenger. That aerial view is just something else. And no matter what time of the year, whether it's springtime and now the green is just coming out in the trees, you see that light green forever. Or if it's a fall with the beautiful fall color we get up here with the maples, it was always, or just winter, when we see the timber wolves down there, or the bear or something in the early fall. It was always fantastic, never just
County Road F.
Take note of the fact that Glenn is zooming in at that point. We don't have the audio, but I know we referenced that we were well over 1,000.
Yeah, we're well over 1,000 feet up and 1,000 feet away for sure.
I heard that on the video. We're at 1,000 feet. I'll be here with you.
Yeah. And that's another thing too that makes it difficult. Sometimes when you're flying in a particular area, there might be a lot of landing spots, but you've got to keep your distance as far as the regulations go. So it's hard to come in for a landing when you have to stay at 1,000 feet.
Protect landowners.
There's that tree house.
Big one.
I think this is where I think Jimmy Rusculla. There'll be a shot of him. He came down on a local road, which I thought was impressive. Right there we go.
Wow.
I did good landed down the road.
Yeah. Nice little system, those little Rally 6s. Nice aircraft.
There's the chicken you're talking about.
Yeah.
So you think Matt was flying that day?
That's my bet, but I could be wrong about that. I don't see a balloon that Rose is flying, so she's a candidate for that as well.
Okay, I'll point out here the X is off to the right with a couple people standing next to it, and then Gus's balloon is laid out there. So that's the final target. And somewhere in here, I run out of batteries.
Just as Dave was coming in over the X.
Yeah, exactly. He said, stow that camera, put it away. It's going to be a hard one.
I don't want anybody to steal all my expertise here. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. That was a good flight. Anything you guys remember about there in particular you liked about it? Well, I know, Steve, you said you flew down to Prescott with April.
Yeah, with April, yeah, I think my sponsor didn't show. Maybe it was too cold, a lot of that happened there. But yeah, she was along, and of course she's only 5'2", and I'm 150 pounds soaking wet, and maybe a little more in those days. So that balloon went 1.9 hours. I was just looking it up, and Prescott is where we landed in a little field, and we squeaked it in there, and it was just a memorable flight because it was the first time at Hudson, and I enjoyed Hudson every year after that. It was a lot of fun. I think I missed one because of sickness or something. But,
yeah. Larry, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think I'm maxed out here.
Go grab your guitar. Dave, how about you? Yeah, all good. Okay. Well, again, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and watching this short video here. And just remember that there's a lot of events. They're going to have some movies on with Charlie Markert, some video of Don Picard. They're going to have some pop-up balloon launches, where they'll just have a balloon on in some open spot where you can drive by. I'm sure there'll be a few of those. They are planning a drive-through moon glow on Saturday night. The location has not been finalized yet. I've heard rumors that there might be some activity over by the industrial park. There again, check the Hudson Hot Air website. It's hudsonhotairaffair.com, and they'll keep that updated. And we hope to see some of you driving by. Enjoy it.